Good afternoon. I'm going to read the first part of my book. It's kind of a little bit longer than a short note or like a poem. It's a note to self as a 9-year-old child. I originally sent this to Gail King on CBS when she wrote her book last year on Note to Self, and so she had a contest. Well, I didn't win the contest, but it was God's gift for me to organize the beginning of the areas I was going to move in. Hello, child of God. I know you are saying, what? Your wisdom at age 9 tells you fasten your seatbelt, we're going for a ride. 2 days before my 9th birthday, Mama goes to her heavenly home. You didn't understand the words from Grandma. If your mother didn't have you later in life at age 38, she'd still be alive today. What did that mean? How did I make my mother die? A teacher's words in grade school, sit down, you can't read. You know the subject, and you can't pass a written exam. Grades were D's, F's, and a couple C's. You will start your road to alcoholism at the age of 18. You realize that you are trapped in grandmother's web of her non-existence grieving process and anger with grandfather's alcoholism. You will have a learning disability that no one understands. A new day will begin at age 29 in the road in a strange world of recovery. You change. What do you expect from me? I'm nothing but a dummy. I'm only a factory worker. You know I can't read. You will change. I can't to yes, I can. You will find new insights to develop special accommodations before it was a coined phrase, to receive a bachelor's, a master's, and an addiction counselor of Arizona. At age 70 years, you will learn the concept of vision tracking disability. For the first time, you will read a book not on CD or tape. A dream will begin to come true, writing your memoir. The most significant gift became changing my attitude to gratitude. I was born into a house with somebody. I was born into a family of lot of love. Now, some of that love was dysfunctional. I know that'll shock you. I'm from a dysfunctional family, but we still had the root of love, very strong. I was the youngest of 3 children. My brother was 13 years older than I am, and my sister 11. So my sister, I think, kind of treated me like a doll for a while, and then my brother, he was always my big brother. We did have a lot of fights at home with my mother and father. My mother would come home from working at Campbell's Soup, where long lines of factory workers. My mother, Campbell's Soup. My brother worked at Milani's Foods for dressing, Milani's dressing for 45 years, and I've worked for Libby's for 21 years and other family. My nephew Mike is now working at Vanny Foods for over 30 years. So we have that line of, and most of us moved up in the ranks even with the factory world. But my mother would come home after having a few drinks with some of her co-workers. And this one night I was sleeping in my parents' room in a child's crib. I was probably 4 or 5, and it was probably a 7-year-old crib. But I saw them fighting out there, and my mother and my dad's trying to hold their arms, and she's yelling. My brother, Roy, he would have been about 17 then, but if you remember the old comic books on the back, Mr. Skinny, my brother could have been the showboard on that one. I mean, we just, and he had rheumatic fever as a child, so he was never really strong. So he walked in and he assumed my father was hitting my mother. So he jumps on him, and my dad was a big guy. My brother was kind of like a fly. My dad kept saying, stop, And so they ended up going into the bedroom, kind of wrestling somewhat. My dad had him on the bed yelling, Roy, stop. You don't know the whole story. So with that, my mother comes in with a ketchup bottle, and back in those days they were glass, and she hits my dad over the head with a ketchup bottle. And then calls the police and says, the hillbilly's at it again. My father goes, sits in a chair, and waits for the police to come, and always went without an incident and that. My father was born in the back hills of Tennessee, and he's a very gentle man. Now, people will look at me when I brag about my father, how gentle and easygoing. They go, who did you take after? I take after my mother. She dressed a grizzly bear, and so have I a few times in my life if I feel somebody's in trouble. Then we moved out to the suburbs when I was 7. All the fighting stopped. You see, with my grandmother, they all lived in the same neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, Inglewood. And so I would be there, and my grandmother would say, well, you know that hillbilly's sleeping with a redhead. And I don't know what redhead means. I was probably 4 or 5. So my mother would come home and yell at him, and he goes, what? And so the grandmother was always stirring the pot of a lot of untruth. And I'm not being prejudiced on that, because she's the one that told me if it wasn't for me, my mother would still be alive. I think my grandmother didn't know how to handle the grieving. She was hurting that her 44-year-old daughter died. And so my grandmother was only 4'10", so I was only 9, so I was the dumper. She begged me to come and live with her during the week, and she kept telling me, this is what your mother would want. So I believed it, but there is a God. I came home every weekend. My father never missed me on weekends. He picked me up on Friday and brought me back Sunday night or Monday morning, and during the summer I would spend the whole time out in the suburbs. But I never heard my grandmother call my father by name. It was always the hillbilly or dumb farmer. And then one day she told me, well, you're nothing but an orphan, no mother, no father. And I'm like, I have a father. Oh, you can't count him because he's not Catholic. Only back in the days when only Catholics would go to heaven, or maybe a few Lutherans. But, but at 9 years old, I went, that's not my God. And I knew that then. And yet I had a faith in God. I went to Catholic school, and I remember, I'm going to guess it was probably 5th grade, this sister said, who do you pray to? And I said, God the Father. And she said, well, how about Jesus? I said, no, I pray God the Father. And so she had me out in the hallway going, you got to pray to Jesus. And I'm like, so an older nun walked by and she said, what did the Griffin girl do now? And she said, she won't pray to Jesus. And this wise woman said, she's praying. What more do we want? So I've had a lot of good gentleness with strangers walking in to kind of articulate what I was saying. After I got older, I kind of realized some of it, I think I struggled with Jesus, that he had a mother and I didn't. So, but when you get older, you start trying to piece these spirituality. In 5th grade is when they told me to sit down. Now, she didn't really yell, you can't read. But I tried to read that one paragraph 3 times. And she had me read it the 2nd time. And she had me to read it the 3rd time. And you just know then you blew it, because then the last time I was stuttering. And she said, please, just take your seat. She didn't really. But in my heart, I heard a bullhorn that said, you can't read. So I struggled all my life through grade school and high school as I stood there. And I was lucky to, my best friend from 4th grade, she was a straight A student. The teachers would say, why don't you help Therese to read? And I always thought she was looking at like a deer in headlights, like what's going on, And she would just look so helpless, say, I don't know how. And that's just how it was. So I just kept on going, and a 7th grade teacher passed me conditionally from 7th to 8th grade and told me if I didn't get my grades up in the first 6 weeks of 8th grade, they would put me back to redo 7th grade. I was really scared. Now, I did get, I knew the subjects, I just couldn't pass. I would get grades of 38, 48, lucky if I got 69 or 71, but those words would jumble. And what it is, it's vision tracking. Now, I just really got my true handle on it when I turned 70 3 years ago, so I'm 73. So I did figure out my special accommodation. But what vision tracking is, it's like a V. And is it like dyslexia? Yeah, they're kissing cousins. But it's a V. So a simple sentence, I am going to the store. When I was in grade school, I would have went, I am store. And then all my friends would laugh, not mean laugh, like, oh, she's being funny again. The teacher would say, you're a class clown again. And I would be going, well, I made my friends laugh. That was good, but I don't know why she's calling me a class clown. I had no idea. You read 2 words, you go back 2 words, you might skip a sentence, you might pull a word from up there. So it's always a jumble, and you don't even know you're doing that. I just thought I had poor comprehensive when I couldn't read. So I was grateful we had an 8th grade teacher that, I'll try to be kind, God. She wasn't the brightest, but thank God she didn't catch that she could have put me back a year, because I think she would have. She got frustrated with me, but she didn't know she had an out. That would have been pretty tough, because with my mother dying at 9 and then to lose my friends in 8th grade to have to go back, I think that would have been pretty traumatic. I made it through high school by the skin of my teeth, and then I started drinking. My first drunk was at 18. I might have had a beer or something in high school, but it wasn't really drinking. But my boss's mother came in. It was back then you would say one girl office, but one woman office. And he had been drinking, and so the mother yelled at me for him drinking. My mom, like, he's probably 40 and I'm 18, how did I make him drink? So he told me just to go home, and I decided then, because I was really upset, and I saw what my other family's members done in the past when they were upset, they would go get a drink. So I walked down to a corner bar near Midway Airport. I walked in, I wasn't 21 yet, I was only 18. So I looked behind the bar and I saw the whiskey, Seagram 7. I'll take a shot of Seagram 7 with water on the side. Now don't ask me how I figured that out. Maybe I watched too many cowboy movies or whatever, but I knew because I was underage I had to act as if. And so my first drunk, I had a blackout. I passed out in the back room, and when I got home, it's like, how did I get here? And that was no red flags for me. I just assumed everybody that drank had blackouts. Now that didn't mean every time I drank I had blackouts. Every time I was in trouble, it was due to drinking, but there was other times that I wasn't in trouble. I was able to slip through the cracks. By the time I got clean and sober at the age of 29, I already had 5 DUIs, and that's back in the days when they weren't given DUIs that often. I've had major car accidents. I remember one morning my Aunt Pat woke me up and said, "What happened to your car?" And I swore, and I said nothing, but with more negative language. And she said, "Look out the window at your car in the driveway." And the car literally was ripped out, the bumper right down. You could see the whole tire. It was just ripped right off. You would have thought somebody used a can opener. She said, "Where's your car? And what happened? Where were you?" I got home 2 hours after you left the bar, and you got home 3 hours after I got home. Where were you for those 5 hours? I don't know. So things like that happen. But you also do a lot of right things. I mean, I was certainly well liked at work. Even when I went to get help at 29, at that point I was the financial secretary of our local union. And people go, how could you do math and you couldn't read? Well, math goes down, reading goes this way. So I think that might be, I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out more and more because I really want to be more involved with that. But so I got sober and with a lot of the ups and downs, and at 18 I got to meet my father's relatives because my grandmother never wanted me to meet the hillbillies, and so when I turned 18, my dad respected his mother-in-law. And he says, now that you're 18, you want to meet my family? And I went, yes. So we went to our family reunion, and it was like hillbilly heaven. The whiskey was flowing, and the fiddle playing, and the banjo picking, and these people really loved family. And the people I call in my life when I talk about my Aunt Pat or Aunt Ruby and some of them, they're really my dad's first cousin. So at 18, we were at the family reunion, and they said, well, you know, you're the same age as our kids. You got to call us aunt and uncle. And I'm looking at them like, you're kidding me. Because my mother's side thought it would be better not to use the term aunt and uncle, that we would become better friends. Well, that was a lie. So I ended up calling them, but it was clumsy. But those 4 or 5 women really swam around me, even though I fought them all the way to keep me under their wing and keep helping me move forward. Yes, they drank. They did some mischievous things too, but they didn't. They were seeing I was going right off the bridge. So when I got to look for recovery, I called up my cousin Janice and an aunt in Tennessee. I had visited her there about 4 or 5 months before, and we sat on the porch swing because the first time I went to Tennessee, I was young, probably 19. Yeah, I'll tell this one because it's part of my spirituality. My cousin, a year younger than me, we drove around, and it's in the back hills, Flintville, Tennessee, but we drove down to Chattanooga. So I had a bottle of whiskey in the car, so driving back and that. So I pull in the house, and we stumbled in, and about 1:30 in the morning. So the next morning, I'm a morning person, and she says, oh, are you going to go to church with us? And I says, oh, is there a Catholic church around? Like I was going to church in Chicago, you know. And she says, no, not in Tennessee. You're going to find very few down here. I said, well, it's against my religion. You know, I was cocky all the time. And she said, you belong to a funny religion. You drink all night, and yet you can't go to church with us. She says, that sounds really odd. And I thought, boy, I'm not fighting this one. So I got dressed. I said, I'll be ready in 10 minutes. But I drove them. And that was a seed, you know. So when I would go down there the other years until I got sober, I would always go with her. And so that last weekend when I was down there, when she was telling me to call my cousin, I went to church, and I really prayed in that old country Baptist church. God, I can't handle this, but I don't know what else to do. You got to help me. So when I got home, I didn't run right to a recovery group or anything. I waited a few months because that last year I tried to control drinking. I'd only drink on weekends, Friday to Sunday or Monday morning. Well, the problem with that is that I went cold turkey on Monday, and then I would start drinking usually Friday, but sometimes Thursday night. But going cold turkey like that year, I kept seeing shadows in the hallway, and so I went to the doctor because at that time I had a rowboat that I'd throw on top of my car with 2x4s, and when you're drinking, you bang your head. And so I told him I thought I maybe had a concussion or something, so everything turned out okay. He says, nothing's wrong. Amazing. About 6-8 weeks after I stopped drinking, those shadows went away. I was probably that close of going into the DTs because with it having so much and then cold turkey, having it, and I did that for a year. And that the last Friday I drank. My sobriety clean and sober date is November 22nd. of 1975. But I went to a retirement party the weekend before, and I took 4 days off of work. That Monday I was so shaky and everything. When I went to work Thursday, the plant manager, Jack, said, "You got nice police in your neighborhood." Okay, what does that mean? And he repeated it. I said, "What are you talking about, Jack?" He said he followed me home, and I was going over a bridge. I about hit the edge of the bridge. I was over the yellow line. I mean, he was really frightened. And when I pulled up in front of our apartment, the police were there. And he promised them that I would not go out anymore that evening. I thought, boy, I couldn't have promised that about myself. But if those police would have looked at my license, I had a hardship license on the front seat, because I didn't, I had lost my license, I think, for 3 months or 6 months, but because of my union and I had the right people to sign the letter, I had an open hardship license on the south side of Cook County, not just Chicago. So from Madison all the way out to any of the other counties, Will County or Calumet County. But that didn't stop me from drinking. But going by doors, I finally realized, and by Jack telling me, boy, I don't know. So I called my cousin, and she says, "When was your last drink?" I says, "Oh, I haven't drank in 4 days." And she said, "Well, don't drink." And I hung up, and I had always heard the myth, an alcoholic turns to vodka. And I had we had a bar in the living room, so I opened up a bottle of vodka, which I'd never drank, just took a slug and put it down there. I was afraid if I went to a recovery group, they would say, "Did you ever drink vodka straight?" And so how could I act like maybe they wouldn't accept me? Nobody's ever asked me that today. I mean, it's the silly stuff you have in your head to try to get around. But people really circled me the first night at the meeting. My cousin said, "Let's close with the Lord's Prayer," and I got mad, and I said, you bring me to a holy roller group? And she said, "Just pray, And so I was pretty rough. Lena May from the factory, she's a black woman. I love you, Lena May. But even when I was young, she would, I'd be half passed out during lunchtime sometimes, or taking a nap, and she'd poke me. She was in her 40s, and she was learning how to read Dick and Jane, and she'd poke me, "What's this word? That? What's this word?" Puff. And I would think, oh my God, how could she do that in front of public, And she would start singing gospel music on the line and slurry words and yelling, and the other workers would say, "Therese, tell her to shut up." And so I'd go, "Lean my," and she said, "I'm praying for you, Therese," and that she stopped drinking. I'd cuss her out and go, "There's 300 other people to pray for, don't pray for me." Well, when I started to get clean and sober, I went to her and I said, "I'm giving this a try." And she said, "Oh, good, now I can pray you go back to church." No! I cussed her out again. That woman, you talk about a strange combination that we became the best friends in the world. But so after I got a little bit of time under my belt, I did walk up to her and tell her I was going to church. And she says, "Now I can pray you go to a convent." I went to a convent high school for 1 year as a freshman, but that's like, so I cussed her out again. But when it got closer, I had 10 years of sobriety when I did feel it was God's call. And none of my friends could believe it, because I could hardly use, I blamed it on the factory, but most of my friends in the factory didn't swear like I did. But I could hardly use 3 words without the F word, And I'm not going to say I never used the word today, but I have control over it today, and when it's appropriate or not appropriate. But I was 40 years old going into the convent. Well, that first one lasted about 1.5 years. I scared them. And because I'd learned as a child with survival skills from my grandmother, we never showed love. We never touched each other. We never said, I love you. We never held you. We never, it was, I love you, you love me. We'll run out in front of a middle of a racing train to stop it, to save your life, but we won't show it. And so it just kept going like that. But, with AA, and I would walk in like this, and people in the recovery groups would say, it's okay to hug. And then my father went to the hospital. No, I went to the hospital. My father was out of town, and one of my mentors came to the hospital. And when she left, she said, take care, and I love you, and kiss me. Well, I called her up that night and go, we don't do that in my family. And she says, well, my mother, my family do that. So if we can accept your rough edges, then you can accept my hugs. So it really it probably took about a year to finally be okay with it, and that, and I hear a lot of people talk about, well, people in recovery don't really believe in God, they just believe in a higher power. And one of the books they're referring to that many people will look at is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The third step says, make a decision to turn our will and our life over to care of God as we understand Him. Oh, that's not the one I was going to use. But anyway, a higher power greater than yourself, a power greater than yourself. And I said, that's the only sentence in there that refers to God as a power greater than yourself. The rest of the book says God in it all the way through. They call God Him. I change it to she or he, and her, and family, but that's me. I can't change the book. It helped me get sober. Probably one of the struggles I had in getting sober. Alcoholism has three folds: spiritually, emotionally, and physically. The first thing that goes down the slide is spiritually. Then you start making poor decisions. Then physically, I had an enlarged liver. They told me if I didn't stop drinking, I would die. I tried to stop drinking on my own once for 3 months, and I woke up and thought I had to die from something. But God wasn't ready for that one yet, so He helped me find help. But so it's reversed when you start getting sober. You start feeling better physically. You start making better decisions. And then the spirituality comes in. And the spirituality, I do believe in, like St. Francis, he's one of my heroes. St. Francis is more than about dogs and wolves and birds. He was good friends with the Sultan at his time. And the brothers would say, how could you hang with somebody that chops off people's heads? And the Sultan's soldiers would say, how could you hang around with such a simple man? And they agreed to disagree, and they maintained their friendship for years. And that's what I've learned in my life, sometimes we just have to figure out what's working right for myself or in me. And another mentor, a mentor of a mentor, told me, Therese, try praying for yourself. I go, no, I'll pray for my neighbors and next door neighbor's dog and everything else. So she encouraged me to thank you, God, for a beautiful day. God bless me. To say that 5 times. Thank you, God, for a beautiful day. God bless me. And then say it 5 times soft. Thank you, God, for a beautiful day. God bless me. Thank you, God, for a beautiful day. God bless me. And then 5 times silent. Thank you, God, for a beautiful day. God bless me. People would encourage me because like I said, I'm nothing but a dummy. I'm nothing but a factory worker. I'm nothing but, those are words I used back then. Today, I can walk even in a shopping mall, and if I see a reflection in the windows or that, and I go, you're doing okay, my sister. You think I call you my sisters and brothers? I call myself that too. And Um, and even this one time, I was really struggling with, I can't get the God part. And my friend Betty said, once you stop making God part of your life in boxes and making God all of your life, it'll make a whole different story in your life. And when I was in the convent, they gave me this, they gave me this thing to write through the whole day, whatever you did, if you brushed your teeth and ate an apple or what, I guess it was supposed to be grazing on your navel or something. But anyway, so I did all this stuff, and the regular, the morning prayers and the liturgy and blah, 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 and all the way. So when she got it, she said, you didn't put down any prayer time for yourself. And I looked at her kind of strange, like, well, what do you mean? She said, well, what time of the day did you pray silently? I said, I pray all day long. No one prays all day long. Well, yeah, I know a lot of people that pray all day long. I have a playful God. I mean, even with this thing, with this reading thing, and I'm going to wind it down. I think I'm going a little too long. But with this reading thing, it's a big thing. If you take my business card out there, if you look at my website, it shows myself and Dr. Tanya Polak, who helped me be able to read 39 pages. We did a morning blend interview in September. And right away my friend's like, oh, that's nice that the doctor invited you for her show. I said, no, I invited her for my show. Yeah, I mean, it's such a different, even my family's like, oh, we keep forgetting you're in a different world. But my kinfolk is my kinfolk. That has never changed that way, but they're still, and then there's another one by CBS Sunday morning show, and it's on dyslexia. And if you look on their blog, I got a reflection from there, but it shows over 50% of inmates cannot read. Dr. Tanya told me 2/3 of children being diagnosed with learning disabilities, they're misdiagnosed. If you get a 20/20 eye exam and you pass it with or without glasses, they stop looking there. They right away think, is it ADHD? Is it physical? Is it behavior? They don't know about vision tracking, that it's word blindness, because this middle part, I'm blind. I can read I can't read store. But today I can read the whole box. But there's so many, and it's really expensive. There's no insurance. A friend of mine last summer when I was home came up to me and she says, my son and daughter-in-law just adopted 2 young children. The youngest one is 6 years old and she's got what you got, vision tracking. I said, oh, thank God. They diagnosed her. She said, no, thank God. They have money. I said, what do you mean? It costs $10,500 for a year for therapy for this little girl. Now, she called me last week to tell me it's been about 30 weeks, and the little girl is excited. She loves going to school. She can read. But back then, she was just fighting everything. But now, it's the changing the I can't to I can. So that's, and I'm going to just explain what kind of playful God I've got. I don't think I even shared this one with Rachel yet. But I was in Chicago, and there was an older sister that I was visiting in her 90s, and she's like a racket jaw with questions. And she's like, well, what you going to do to help kids with this problem? And I said, I don't know. So I left after having coffee with them because I was going to meet some friends for breakfast in Chicago, and I'm driving. I've got soft music on, and I'm going, God, I don't know. Where do you want to take me with this? And I'm listening to classical music and kind of like an but paying attention to driving. And then all of a sudden I felt God said, a foundation. I went off. I went, are you crazy, God? A foundation? I'm 73 years old. I don't even know the real definition except that it helps other people, And then I calmed down again. And I felt God said, who else can do it? So I'm working with a couple people that's volunteered to help me. We're looking at the Lions Club to maybe we can do some stuff with Old Pueblo community centers because it's for the homeless and the homeless from the prisons, felons, and then also the VA. But just to kind of see and connect us with some of the alcoholism and that, because many of us started drinking, and that's not necessarily my case, but I certainly was given the stuff. If you had a cold, you got a hot toddy or something, but I never liked the taste of it. I didn't like the taste of whiskey either. The first drink always felt like chicken bones, but I just kept drinking it anyway. But it's just, there's too many kids in the back hills of Tennessee, inner city kids on the reservations that's being slipped right through the cracks. On that CBS, they also had a couple that's been from Yale, I believe it was Yale. They've been doing research for 40 years on kindergartners, and they say 1 out of 5 kindergartners has dyslexia, vision tracking, or something similar. So if you'd want to look on take a card and just look to educate, because you might have some grandchildren or cousins or whatever, nieces, nephews. So I'm going to wind down with I'm going to sing a refrain to a song that I love. It's by Carrie Laundrie. La 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 la. Great things happen when God mixes with us. Great and beautiful, wonderful things. Great things happen when God mixes with us. Some find peace, some find hope, others find joy.